Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Sustainability Report Standards Boards of ICI, CA Ankur Kishore Gada, extends a warm welcome to all of you to the 14th session of our webinar series, Demystifying Sustainability Catalyzing Growth. Today's session is centered around a critical theme, BRSR core assurance, key expectation, practical challenges, and way forward. We are honored to have with us our esteemed speaker, CA Muskan Jain ji. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker, CA Muskan Jain ji. Muskan Jain is a passionate sustainability professional currently serving as Senior Manager ESG at Incorp Global, a Singapore headquartered advisory and compliance firm. Muskan has made significant contributions to ESG assurance and sustainability reporting for listed companies across India, Singapore, and Hong Kong. A chartered accountant and an ICI certified BRSR professional, Muskan brings a unique blend of financial expertise and ESG leadership. Her commitment to knowledge sharing is evident on sustainability topics, hosting of webinars and sessions, and conducting both internal and external training programs. Now, Muskan madam, you can start our session.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Ankurji. Can we begin from the team?
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. So, once again, good evening, everybody who has joined. It is my pleasure to, be speaking on this topic today, that is BRSR core assurance. As chartered accountants, we already bring a good eye to the audits and internal controls and regulatory framework, and today we will be discussing a little bit different topics than usual financial topics, that is on the BRSR core assurance. Please allow me to share my screen, and then we can start with the discussion. Hope my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, all right, all right. So, like I mentioned, our focus area today will be BRSR core assurance. We will be exploring what SEBI expects, what we as assurance providers can add value to the disclosures made by the company, and what are the practical challenges we face while executing these projects on ground. We have structured the discussion into three core themes. First one being understanding the foundation of BRSR core. We will also be exploring the practical challenges while executing the projects, and lastly, outlining the way forward for all the practitioners at what we need to do next in this theme. Our agenda, as displayed on the screen, is to talk about BRSR, BRSR core, assurance frameworks, expectations, case studies, practical challenges, and we will also be taking your questions. Since this is a new topic, fairly new to the CA practice area as such, feel free to ask as many questions, and we will try taking the questions during our course of discussion. So let us begin. Before we start with BRSR core, let us take a step back and talk about what exactly BRSR is. BRSR, as it stands for Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, was introduced by SEBI in 2021 as a voluntary disclosure, and from financial year 22-23, it is mandated for top 1,000 listed companies by market capitalization to report on BRSR. BRSR is part of your annual report, and this is part of the SEBI's LODR regulations. Uh, Before BRSR, the companies were required to report on BRR, that is Business Responsibility Report. But BRSR brings a lot of shift from BRR in terms of the disclosures. So BRSR is more comprehensive from qualitative and quantitative disclosure perspective, and it integrates a lot of financial and non-financial aspects for companies to holistically present their environment, social, and governance related metrics. Uh, BRSR is taking it's aligning with NGRBC framework, that is National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct, which talks about 9 principles for responsible business conduct. These are the 9 principles that we report in BRSR. Now, moving on to the topic, that is BRSR core. BRSR core is a subset of BRSR basically. These are 9 key disclosures or 9 defined metrics which have been published by SEBI for assurance. And these BRSR core indicators are integrated in the BRSR report itself. So that means to say that all the companies who are reporting BRSR are mandatorily reporting on the BRSR code. These are not separately given somewhere on, there is no separate report as such. But SEBI has only mandated BRSR core assurance from a glide path perspective. So from this financial year, if you see top 250 listed entities are required for a to go for a reasonable assurance on BRSR code. And going forward till 26-27, all the top 1000 listed entities that are reporting on BRSR will be mandatorily required to get their uh, BRSR core assurance done. Now, recently, SEBI has also come up with assurance or assessment, giving a choice to the companies to, uh, decide whether they want to go for an assurance or assessment. So far, industry standard forum has not come up with any assessment related guidance. So today our discussion will be narrowing down only towards BRSR core assurance per se. These are the 9 KPIs of BRSR core. It covers all the 3 aspects of E, S, and G. Uh, why basically these parameters are being given is because they are quantifiable to the maximum possible extent. And these disclosures can be compared from company to company. It can be compared with the same companies in the industry and also peers. Since these are not merely qualitative disclosures as such, it is easier for us also as assurance practitioners to verify and validate this information. So these are the 9 parameters going on from GHG emission footprint, water footprint, energy, waste, well-being, gender diversity, inclusive development, talking about MSME and input material purchase. Then we have fairness in engaging with customers and suppliers. We also have openness of business from a related party and trading house perspective. So throughout our discussion and going forward, we will be discussing each KPI in detail and how assurance can be done for each KPI as per the SEBI circular. So we will be discussing those aspects as well. Moving on to what is BRSR assurance. Assurance in general is independent examination of information. So in the context of BRSR, BRSR assurance is nothing but independently verifying what disclosures the company have made in their BRSR, particularly in the BRSR core, because that is something which is coming as a mandatory requirement by SEBI. What assurance practitioners are required to do is to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence to conclude, uh, to express a conclusion on the BRSR code. Now, this will help to enhance the degree of confidence that the users will have about the subject matter information, that is the BRSR information. This is a wonderful exercise to not only verify and validate the information, but also increase the trust among the users. And this will help the companies from reporting perspective as well. Now, since assurance has to be conducted, we all are aware that there should be some framework that has to be followed. So these are a few frameworks which are globally accepted and also which can be applied from a BRSR core assurance point of view. Starting with ISAE 3000, which is globally accepted from IAASB International Auditing Standards Board. This standard is particularly now getting replaced by ISSA 5000, which is mandatory from upcoming financial year onwards. From Indian context, we also have SSAE 3000, which is by the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board. We have SAE 3410. We also have AA 1000 assurance standard. And like I mentioned, ISSA 5000, which is mandatory from next year onwards. Now, SSAE 3000 particularly will be talking about assurance on non-financial information. So this is the blanket standard that we refer while doing the assurance of BRSR code. So before moving on to how we do assurance, let us first understand why the assurance is relevant at the first place. First of all, like I mentioned, it is compliance with regulatory requirements because now top 250 companies for financial year 24-25 are mandatorily required to comply with assurance. So that is where we as chartered accountants can step in, and the assurance blanket is only going to increase going forward. So that also gives a boost to our practice as such. Then the next thing it helps is to enhance the trust and confidence of stakeholders and the information that is reported in BRSR. Then we also have something as ESG ratings, which is something very similar to financial ratings and credit ratings that the companies give. ESG rating providers usually consider the audited information to be more reliable, and thus the rating improvement is seen in companies, those who go for assurance. So that is something which can add as a value addition for companies if they go for assurance. Then there are in ESG funds which are required to invest only in those companies which have undertaken BRSR assurance. ESG funds are monitored regularly, and they have a lot of updates from SEBI as to where the investing has to happen, what are the criteria that the companies have to meet. Since the fund managers cannot, check one by one criteria by themselves, they always prefer the audited reports from chartered third party assurance providers. So that is somewhere uh, BRSR assurance becomes relevant. Also, from a company's point of view, it reduces the risk of misreporting and greenwashing. Because, to be very honest, since this is uh, in a very nascent stage right now, the companies are also not aware as to what is the exact report that has to go, and what are the parameters that are to be collected. What are the data checks that have to happen internally? So, going through assurance can help them reduce the risk of misreporting and greenwashing. Finally, it also gives a visibility for the companies in the supply chain because from next year onward, supply chain disclosures are also brought about by SEBI, and there is where the chain of whole 1000 listed entities is going to expand, and a lot of supply chain partners are also being brought in the bracket of BRSR reporting and assurance. So that will be a whole new area for assurance practitioners as well as the companies to tap in. Moving on to the type of assurance, we have basically two types of assurance, internal and external. Internal assurance is something where uh, the assurance boundary, etc., is defined by the company, and the assurance provider works across finding out the validations only through the background that is defined by the company. So there are different types of internal assurance or process audits per se that chartered accountants can look into. One is reporting assurance that is on the BRSR core, SR, GHG statements, etc. Then there is something called as risk assessment that can be done for ESG related risk. We have due diligences from the perspective of, again, ESG disclosures, and process assurance to establish internal controls for ESG related processes. This discussion today, we will be largely focusing on the external assurance part. So, external assurance again have two types of assurance from the point of view of external assurance, that is limited assurance and reasonable assurance. As we go forward, we will decode what is limited and reasonable assurance, but this is exactly the same like how we talk from the financial assurance perspective. So, since we spoke about a lot of types of assurance, here we have given a lowest to highest degree of confidence from the level of assurance perspective. That is starting with internal audits because that is something which is set and defined by the management. This will give the lowest degree of confidence. And going on the hierarchy is the limited assurance, then reasonable assurance, and finally absolute assurance, which as such can never be achieved. So we will be targeting the two spaces of limited assurance and reasonable assurance. Important to note that when we are talking from BRSR core assurance perspective, we are only talking about limited assurance because, uh, sorry, we are only talking about reasonable assurance because reasonable assurance is mandated by SEBI. Fine, we spoke about the levels of assurance. Now, whether or not we can provide the assurance services. So, this slide will help you understand that who can be an assurance provider. The SEBI has come up with a circular and they have told that any assurance provider that has necessary expertise on BRSR can undertake reasonable assurance. They've also said that there should not be any conflict of interest. So, these are the two broad requirements mentioned by SEBI. And further to clarify things, they came up with a FAQ forward after this. So this answers some of our questions, whether does the assurance provider needs to mandatorily be a chartered accountant, whether internal auditor can be an assurance provider or statutory auditor can be an assurance provider, and so on. So there were a lot of queries which were being raised to SEBI. So the FAQ resolves around these queries, and the SEBI has said that BRSR core assurance provider need not necessarily be a chartered accountant. It is professional agnostic. That means anybody who is having necessary expertise in this field can very well take up the assurance. Then, if a firm is as appointed as an internal auditor of the listed entity for financial or any other audits per se, then they cannot take up a BRSR core assurance because that will become a clear conflict of interest. But a statutory auditor can very well take up the BRSR core assurance because the independence requirement is not something which is, uh, not met in this case because statutory auditor is required to be independent. That way, even BRSR core assurance can be taken up by the statutory auditor. So these are the assurance conclusion paragraphs that are there in SSAE 3000. So I've just replicated the same here. Reasonable assurance, we say that the BRSR core is prepared in all material aspects. That is, we are not giving a negative assurance, we are giving a positive assurance statement. You can think of it like a statutory audit where we are saying that nothing, we are saying that all the disclosures are prepared in a material aspect and all the disclosures are in accordance with the criteria. So reasonable assurance can be looked upon like a proper statutory audit. Then we have limited assurance. Limited assurance wordings are negative, which goes like nothing has come to our attention, which means to say that you're reviewing it, but you're not giving a reasonable level of assurance. You're giving it from a limited point of view. So this you can look up like a limited review. So in limited review, we verify the disclosures, and this is the statement that we give as part of the conclusion. So these are the two reasonable assurance and limited assurance conclusions. Any questions so far?
No questions yet, ma'am.
Sure. So then moving on to the next aspect, that is the SSAE 3000 methodology. Now, SSAE 3000 is what we told that we will be using from the point of view of BRSR core assurance. Just like any other standards on auditing, SSAE 3000 is very comprehensive and gives a lot of guidance for the assurance practitioners from acceptance of engagement till the reporting. So, this is the standard that has to be referred for the purpose of providing the assurance. Now, engagement acceptance, we have to assess the independence, whether the firm, whether the partner, whether the audit team is independent, whether the eligibility criteria are met, and whether the subject matter and preconditions of audit is present. So we will have to assess all of these preconditions of audit before accepting the assignment. Then we have planning stage where we sort of understand the entity, define materiality, identify the important and key areas, and we also plan for our assurance that how long we are going to um, take for this particular assurance. What is the timeline that we are setting? What are the basic checks that we will be doing, and what is the detailed assurance plan? So that has to be covered in the planning stage. Then we move on to the execution stage, where we keep a key emphasis on the quality control. Then professional skepticism, professional judgment. We also use assurance skills and techniques, conduct site visits at this stage, use trend analysis, verify the documents, vouching of data. All of these happens at the execution phase. And lastly, once the execution of audit is done, once the observations are discussed, then goes comes across with the reporting of the assurance. Now, if you see, these steps are as is what we have for financial audit and financial scrutiny. We have just sort of replicated it from the perspective of ESG and BRSR disclosures. But the whole the whole background, the whole structure, the whole process of audit remains same. So now we will go on to the audit methodology of each of the BRSR core indicator that is given by the SEBI in the BRSR core circular of last year. The first parameter being GHG footprint, that is greenhouse gas. Now, greenhouse gases are those seven gases that are being mentioned and collectively called as greenhouse gases. And this is one of the parameters in BRSR core from the environment section. There are two types of emissions, scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 1 emissions are direct emissions from organizations' controlled sources, and scope 2 emissions are indirect emissions. So, in this particular attribute, we will be talking about three parameters. One is the total scope 1 emissions reported by the entity. Next is total scope 2 emissions. And lastly, on the GHG emission intensity. Now, this intensity is calculated for combined scope 1 and scope 2. How do you measure the emissions? So the emissions are measured in ton CO2 equivalent for the purpose of BRSR. And these emissions are then divided by the total revenue from operations to come up with the intensity. And the second type of intensity that is required to be reported is the intensity from output of products or services, that is physical output perspective. Now, in the circular, SEBI has come up with the data and assurance approach, which is being displayed on the slide. So, firstly, from the scope 1 perspective, when the company is reporting on the emissions, there will be two parts to this. One part is about all of their energy consumption from natural resources, fossil fuels, from the activities that the company is undertaking. And the second aspect will be the emission factor that the company is applying. So, the total resource used multiplied by the emission factor will help you arrive at the total emissions for the company. Now, when we talk about scope 1 covers all the fossil fuels, that is coal, natural gas, diesel, etc., that the company is using. It also covers quantity of carbon capture. So if you want to follow the assurance approach, first you will have to quantify how much of coal was consumed in the process, how much of diesel was consumed during the process, during the operation of the company for the financial year. Then we arrive at the emission factor, like I mentioned. So emission factor, there are a lot of sources for emission factors. One of the source being IPCC, that is the agency that gives about the emission factor for different sources of energy. Then the emission factor can also be something that the company has derived based on actual testing. So if the company has undertaken actual testing, then those emission factors can be used. This particularly happens for manufacturing industries which use coal as their base. So when they are using coal, as per the norms, they have to take the accredited test lab to take what kind of uh, calorific value is the coal generating when burnt, and we can use those factors directly for the purpose of calculating scope 1 emission. The next part is quantity of carbon capture. So if at all those parameters are there within the company, we can reduce this from the total scope 1 emission. Then we have GHG emissions by process. Now, this is non-fuel source. In the first point, we talk about fossil fuel sources. In the fourth point, we are talking about process emissions. So, for example, in one of your process, you are emitting any carbon, which is not coming through burning of any resource per se, but because of your process is designed in such a way that for the for manufacturing from product A to product B, or processing from resource A to resource B, you are emitting carbon. Then those direct emissions from the process are also to be considered. Then we have something called as fugitive emissions. Fugitive emissions come from refill gases in air conditioners, in fire extinguishers, refrigerators, chillers, etc. So if there are any R22, R32, R134A, etc., which the company is using and emitting, so those gases details are to be collected. Now, as auditors, we will not be collecting and collating the data. The company will be doing it. Our job is to check whether the correctness, completeness, and accuracy of numbers is present. For that, we verify their invoices and get into details on how the numbers were captured, what was the internal control around those aspects, and how exactly the consolidation has taken place. So these are something that you will have to keep in mind for the assurance approach from scope 1 perspective. And then the total scope 1 recalculation which you will be doing is multiplying the fossil fuel consumption into the emitting factor, reducing the carbon capture, and adding any process emissions, as well as the fugitive emissions if the company is taking. So this is the whole assurance approach that has to be followed. Similarly, for scope 2, also the assurance approach is given, wherein scope 2 talks about indirect emissions from generation of energy. Basically, majorly, this comes for the grid energy that the company is procuring and using. So, for the grid electricity, we will have to calculate the scope 2 emission, which is also again in the same uh, manner that we first quantify what is the energy consumption for the company throughout the financial year, multiply it with the emission factor, and then the summation of those two will give us the scope 2 emissions. Moving on to the intensity part. So in intensity, what we will do is we will take a sum of scope 1 and scope 2 emission and check it with the recalculations that the company has done. So for the purpose of revenue intensity, you are required to divide the total emission with the total revenue from operations. This revenue from operations can be relied from the audited profit and loss statement. Then we have a purchase power parity factor, which is required to be obtained from the IMF portal. International Monetary Fund talks about PPP factor, and you multiply that factor to arrive at the revenue from operations adjusted for PPP. So these are the two intensities, and the last intensity talks about the physical output. So physical output can be anything. It can be based on what product or service that the company is manufacturing and how they actually quantify their services and products. And according to that, we can arrive at the total output of products and services. So these are the three aspects from GHG footprint perspective. So, like we started, that this is same as financial audit. So all of these calculations, data collection, etc., will be done by the client. Our contribution as an assurance provider is point number A, to verify the sources, whether the sources are accurate, whether the accuracy is maintained, whether the completeness has been taken care or not. We have practically seen that, even the companies are missing one of their factories while collecting the data. And if they are collecting the data for the factory, they are missing collecting the data from multiple meters. So that is where, as an assurance provider, our professional skepticism will come into place, and we sort of check and validate the data and help them, not basically help them, but try to identify what is the correct reporting numbers that has to go, and accordingly align our assurance practices. The next attribute from BRSR code talks about water. So it is water footprint. There are three parameters that are required to be reported here. One is on the total water consumption. Then we have water consumption intensity and water discharge. Now, all of these data that I'm talking about from environment perspective, say be it emissions, energy, water waste, that is something which is not directly linked or coming from financial data. So we will have to bring in experts wherever required who can help us measure and monitor the data. We will have to work as a multidisciplinary team, and only then we will be able to ensure that the accuracy is maintained. Now, talking about water consumption can be verified through water bills. It can be verified through water meters. It can be verified through third-party certificates if they are able to provide. And if there is no measurement possible, then a simple formula has been given by SEBI, which says that water consumption can be calculated using the following: input water flow meter logs. Uh, minus the output water flow meter logs will give you the total water consumption for the financial year. Water intensity is just same like the GHG intensity that we spoke about. We first arrive at the total water consumption, then use the data from the audited financials, from revenue from operations, and specific output details to arrive at the water intensity. So this is the data and assurance approach which is specified by SEBI. Next, we have on water discharge. So when we talk about water discharge is something which the manufacturing entity or the company is letting it outside their premises. So that is something which is captured in water discharge. So the BRSR format wants to know that how much of your water is discharged without treatment and with treatment. So this is the two types that they have defined: no treatment and with treatment. No treatment is something that is directly flowing outside the organization, but with treatment again falls into three categories: primary treatment, secondary treatment, and tertiary treatment. Why I'm going into more detail of these terms is because auditing techniques and practices are something that we already know and have established. But understanding these jargons or terms will help us more imbibe the auditing techniques while we are doing the BRSR core assurance. So this is something which will be very helpful for us to combine the knowledge of assurance which we already have with the technical skills and the knowledge that is required from the BRSR assurance perspective. And the merge of these two will be will help us, in actually performing the BRSR core assurance on ground. So these terms goes back to our science classes in school: primary treatment, secondary treatment, and tertiary treatment. Primary treatment, secondary and tertiary treatment is what is monitored by the company. As assurance practitioner, we will have to take the meter flow documents. We will have to take the reports from the specific teams who are monitoring these data and verify whether the calculations and quantity has come properly. Now, these water-related parameters will be reported in kiloliters per se. So we quantify all of the numbers in kiloliters and then use it for further intensity calculation. Next up, we have energy. This is again from the environment parameter per se. So the total energy consumption can come from two resources: renewable and non-renewable resources. Adding those two resources, and if there is any purchased electricity, cooling, heat, steam, etc., that is being used by the organization, will help us arrive at the total energy footprint. If at all there is any sale of renewable energy, these are some of the questions that practically comes, that the company is not using entire renewable energy that it is generating, but it is actually selling that renewable energy to another company. In those situations, we will have to reduce that consumption which is getting sold, and then arrive at the energy consumption that has to be reported in the BRSR. If at all the company is purchasing any such green credits or renewable energy from another entity, that has to be added in the energy consumption. It is to ensure that the consumption is not getting calculated twice, and it is also to ensure that the numbers are streamlined with the financial disclosures. Now, there also comes a typical question that in case of diesel, diesel is a fuel. So we are considering the energy consumption from diesel. But from diesel, we are generating electricity through DG sets. Now, again, if we count the energy generated by the DG set, that is the electricity, this will amount to double count. So we take the energy consumption at the first source, that is in our case, diesel. So we will calculate the energy consumption from diesel and ignore the electricity that is generated by the DG set to avoid double counting. So again, you will have to check the records of the company and see how many locations the company operates and whether the electricity consumption of all the locations are considered properly or not, whether renewable and non-renewable bifurcation is happening properly or not, and whether the unit of measurement, because this is where we see a lot of mistakes that happens at the client's end, that the unit of measurement will not be proper. So keeping a consistency in unit of measurement, we will have to cross-check all of these details. Energy is reported in joules or multiple of joules. Specifically, gigajoules is what is getting reported in BRSR majorly. So that is something that we will have to uh, calculate and then convert. So all of these conversions, calculations require a lot of technical understanding and knowledge from environment background and perspective. Next up, we have energy consumption intensity, which will be calculated from the revenue from operations from financials and the uh, sector specific output details, just like any other intensity. Last environment disclosure that we have is from the waste generation point of view. Now, waste in India is regulated by Pollution Control Board through various acts. So, like you can see, there are 6, 7 acts that are listed in the assurance approach. So, what the assurance provider is required to do is, first of all, be aware of all these acts, what are the regulatory requirement, and this varies from companies to companies. So if I am doing the audit of a manufacturing entity, then waste is something that is more relevant, um, more key, can become a key area, whereas if I'm doing the audit of a service industry, waste is something that may not come to that extent. So having an understanding of the entity before starting up with the audit is something that will help to plan that what kind of expertise, what kind of resources will be required throughout the audit. And when we talk about the waste generation from BRSR perspective, it has given the categorization. So it starts with plastic waste, e-waste, biomedical waste, construction demolition waste, battery waste, radioactive waste, hazardous and non-hazardous waste. Each waste is more or less governed by one of the waste management rules, as you can see here. And the quantification made by the company should fall under these rules. So, as assurance provider, we will be verifying the manifestos, we will be verifying the outward gate passes, the methodology used for the quantification of all of these waste. And all of the waste are to be brought into the single unit of measurement, that is metric tons. Sometimes it so happens that say for example, uh, paper waste, instead of coming to metric ton, they report the paper waste in terms of bags of paper that they are selling. So that in that cases we will have to ensure that the conversion of waste is happening correctly into the single unit of measurement, that is metric ton. And the summation of all of these waste, which is generated during the financial year, has to be reported in BRSR, irrespective of whether that waste is discarded during the year or not. It can so happen that the company has generated the waste, kept it at its premise only, but not disposed due to practical reasons or due to uh, their internal approach of discarding of waste. Yet that waste has to be come in the waste generation for the financial year. So by doing site visit and visiting their premises, you can fairly be aware of what kind of waste the company generates and whether or not all of the different types of waste have been considered in the BRSR point of view. Intensities again can be calculated from the same methodology. So we'll just quickly move forward with waste recovery. So when a waste is generated in an organization, there are two things to it. Either you can dispose the waste or you can recover the waste. Now, disposal can happen through incineration, landfilling, or you are directly dumping it somewhere. So all of these will fall in the disposal point of view. In BRSR core, we are not only required to disclose on the waste generation, but also how the waste is managed at the end of life. So it can be through recovery and it can also be through disposal. This is something which gets tricky because the data pertaining to waste may not be monitored to such an extent other than for hazardous waste, because for hazardous waste, of course, there are norms and rules that the company has to follow, but for other kinds of waste, it is totally at the discretion of the company and the internal policies of the company of how they handle the waste. So you will have to sit through with the respective team and understand how exactly the waste is getting disposed, understand what are the different sources of waste generation, which we call as source points, and what are the different points of waste disposal and waste recovery. Analysis of this type of analysis will help in cross-linking particular waste directly from the generation till the source of its recovery and disposal. For these, the audit documents and the assurance approach that is required as per SEBI is that you can take certificates from the vendors. This can be recycled certificates. It can be reuse certificates that you can get from different vendors to whom you're disposing the waste as such. Again, waste disposal. What is the quantity of waste that goes to landfill? What is the quantity of waste that is disposed to incineration? The incineration can happen within the premise of the company. It can also happen outside. So all of these records are to be collected, and a summation of these records can only help you prepare for the verification of waste related disclosure. So with this, we have covered the environmental aspects of BRSR core. If there are any questions, we can take those or we can move ahead.
Hi, Muskan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are some few questions. First is, which type of assurance is mandated by SEBI in 2023 circular?
Okay. So in 2023 circular, SEBI has mandated a reasonable assurance for top 250 companies for this financial year 24-25. Till last year, it was only for 150 companies. So reasonable assurance on BRSR core is mandatory.
Okay, so continuing this question itself, there are one or two sub questions. SSAE are mandated for CA.
Yes. So if you're giving as a CA, if you're providing assurance on BRSR, then you can either follow ISAE, you can follow SSAE. These are the two standards that are widely, practiced and followed by a CA. But if you have
Okay.
taken a AA accreditation, you can go for that standard as well.
Okay. If private companies undertake core assurance assignments, are there any standards mandated for them?
So one thing we have to understand that the standards are not mandated for the company. The standards are mandated for the assurance provider. So if you're doing the assurance of private company or public company, that really doesn't change the framework that you will be using. So
Okay.
you will be doing the assurance as per SSAE only, but you can choose to go for a limited assurance because reasonable assurance is not mandatory for that client.
Okay. Fair. Next question is, does this BRSR core activity take place after completion of stat audit or in side by side with stat audit?
Very good
Plus,
question. Yeah, yeah. Is there any
Sorry.
addition to that question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, in
Yeah.
India, BRSR core professionals are regulated by which legal body? Only SEBI?
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll answer the first question. When we talk about BRSR core assurance, that is something that starts parallelly along with your financial audit, but you will have to understand that few numbers cannot come to you, like which we will see forward, like accounts payable, spending on well-being,
Yeah.
that cannot come to you unless a financial audit has happened. So you can
Okay.
start your work, but your signing or your conclusion of audit will only happen after the conclusion of financial audit, because you will be relying on lot of numbers from financial audit. So that is the
Okay.
first question. And the second question, I believe you asked on which is the regulatory body for.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh,
So from CA's perspective, both I think ICAI, NFRA will also be a regulatory body as well as SEBI, because SEBI is coming up with the regulatory requirement.
okay. Next question is, how do the responsibilities and expectations from assurance providers under SEBI's BRSR core assurance framework compare with those under global sustainability assurance standards such as ISAE 3000 or AA 1000 AS?
Okay, so when we talk about the expectation from a BRSR core assurance practitioner, SEBI has just called out two requirements. One is you should have expertise in that field, and second, there should not be any conflict of interest. You are free to follow any assurance framework. But when we are following that assurance framework, the assurance framework calls about certain do's and don'ts that you have to follow. Like you have to maintain independence, there should be ethics, there should be quality control. So these are the parameters that has to be followed by a assurance practitioner. So ISAE 3000 and SSAE 3000 are very well linked in that aspect. Whatever independence, ethics, quality control requirements are called out in ISAE, same things are called out in SSAE. AA is also on the similar lines because they have to maintain the international standard for assurance, right? So they will have the similar requirements from professional ethics and quality perspective.
Okay. Okay. Next is, if a company has too many factories and sites, how do we choose samples in a way to ensure completeness for these indicators of GHG?
Okay, so this is again something which practically comes up while you're doing assurance. Uh, I would go back and ask you the same question from financial audit perspective. How many sites and samples do you cover? That will depend upon what level of satisfaction or what level of confidence you have in the entity, in the management, in the practices of the entity, right? So maybe entity is having 7 8 sites, and while you started verifying 2 3 sites, you understood that
Hmm.
there are mistakes all
Yeah,
over. Then you will have to extend your assurance practices.
correct.
But if you're satisfied with your sample size, then you can resort to substantive testing instead of active verifying all the documents. You can go by trend analysis, you can go by uh, other parameters like correlating with financial numbers and close it there. So to
Okay.
answer, there is no fixed number as such. There is no fixed number for materiality also. Both of it
Right.
depends on the professional judgment of the assurance provider.
Correct. Correct. Next is, verifying output water flow could be challenging in case of many companies. Any practical solution for this?
Yes. So when you talk about water flow, first of all, you can ask the companies to install water meters. This is something which is a mandatory requirement by a lot of consent to operates also. So if you are having a manufacturing facility, you have to obtain a consent to operate, and they
Yes.
require you to measure your water outflow. So you can help the company establish that. If at all that is not in place, then what you can do is you can help the company or discuss with the company of any assumption that they have used. Say, suppose their process involves is very water intensive. So if you're inletting 1,000 liters of water, that process itself consumed 80 90% of water. In that case,
Mm.
you can draw one assumption and according to that come up with the approximate figure and disclose that assumption in the BRSR that we have not gone by water meters, but we have verified using this assumption technique.
Okay. Okay. One last question. How will you check the water discharge with respect to primary, secondary, tertiary as the wastewater reports include inlet and outlet of STP/ETP? There are discharge standards issued by CPCB for wastewater.
Correct. So I think wastewater reporting, if you're talking about that, will come in the water footprint. So let me take you there.
Oh,
So here primary, secondary and tertiary treatment they have defined. So ETP and STP mostly we will have to see what level of filtration they are doing, and from the meter logs of ETP and STP we will be able to quantify. It is just that we have to bucket it whether it will come in primary treatment or secondary treatment as such. Tertiary treatment is very next level of treatment. You know that is like cleaning the water to such an extent that it comes back to reuse in a purest form. So that is something that the companies will not be able to do. But primary and secondary, you can quantify based on the meter logs. STP, ETP meter logs should help you get that details. And then what you can do is you can come back to this formula and calculate water consumption. That is input water minus output water will be your water consumption.
consumption. Okay. So yeah, for now, these many questions are there.
Perfect. So we will move forward. You can keep shooting the questions. So after maybe social section, we can take the questions again. Then after governance section, we can take the questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, thank you for the engaging questions. Moving on to the next aspect, that is the social aspect of BRSR code, which talks about employee well-being and safety. First, we will be talking about the well-being. So, the parameter here in BRSR is spending on measures towards well-being of employees and workers. You have to arrive at as a percentage of total revenue for the company. So two parts, we can break this parameter into two parts, the numerator being the spending on well-being and denominator being the revenue of the company. The revenue of the company can directly be verified from your audited financial statements. To verify on the numerator part, you can check the policy documents, you can check the insurance document, you can check maternity salary that is being paid to the employees, and so on and so forth. So SEBI has clearly defined what are the well-being measures that you can take up for the purpose of calculating this indicator. That is, health insurance can be taken, accident insurance, maternity, paternity benefits, daycare facility. And if you're providing any features or any such measures which includes access to mental health awareness, yoga awareness, all of those can fall under the health and safety measures. So the company is required to maintain a log register which has all of these measures and what is the exact spending that they have done. You can verify those back, you can sort of track them back with the policy documents, premium paid receipts. If there are any recoveries from the employees, those recoveries have to be reduced and only the net cost of the company has to be considered. So that will be your numerator part, and the denominator will be the revenue that will help you arrive at the percentage for employee well-being. These calculations are usually done by the company and verified by us, but since they will have to go through their financial audits first, so once the financial numbers are closed, only then we will be able to verify this disclosure. The next parameter talks about safety related incidents. Now, safety parameter is something which is also getting reported through Factories Act as well. So we will have to ensure that the documentation are not contradicting to each other. The definitions are given in the BRSR guidance document with respect to what is recordable injuries, permanent injuries, fatalities, etc. We have to check it from the incident register report that is maintained by the company, and what is the basis of them classifying the injuries into different categories that is given by SEBI. So we can also validate this through insurance reimbursements if anything has happened, or if there are any claims from insurance companies, we can cross track it with that claims. Then the second aspect is to check on the fatalities. So this is on the basis of the claims as reported to the factory inspector. So like I said, the safety related incidents are also required to be reported as per Factories Act. So we can check this fatality claim with the help of the claims that is reported to factory inspector. The next parameter in this will be the LTIFR, that is lost time injury frequency rate. We have to cross check the calculation from what is the total number of lost time injuries, what are the total number of working hours, and whether the calculation has happened as per the SEBI's calculation format as such. Now, all of these details comes from different factories, different locations. So all of these locations are to be consolidated and then reported in the BRSR for the reporting boundary that the company has opted. So if it is going on the basis of standalone, then only for those entities you will have to collect overall all the data of BRSR. Otherwise, we will have to extend the procedures to the consolidated entities as well. Next, two parameters for the social BRSR core. First one is on the gross wages paid to females as a percentage of total wages. This parameter is looking to see that what is the wage cost that you are paying to females when compared to the males in the organization. So this you can verify with the help of employee master and register and check exactly how much of payment is happening to the female employees. Now they have mentioned the word wages here, but they are covering all the employees, all the contractual workers also. So the wages term can be a bit misinterpreted. We will have to see that the company has included all of their permanent employees and contractual employees while calculating this data. The next parameter is on complaints on POSH. Now, POSH complaints is also required to be reported in the board's report, and this is something which is mandatory for companies to have a internal complaints committee. So we will have to obtain the annual report of the internal complaints committee that the committee sends about to the company and verify whether all the cases as reported in the ICC's report is getting reported in the BRSR or not. So these are the two aspects from employee perspective. Then we have inclusive development, that is input material purchased from MSMEs and from within India. Basically, input material is defined by industry standard forum, which slightly uh, sort of varies from the normal input material that we would consider by bringing in capex procurement and services also into the purview of input material. So what this disclosure is trying to ask is if as a company you're spending 100 rupees, and out of this 100 rupees, how much of the spending is towards MSME. Now you can verify these disclosures based on the MSME registers which is maintained by the company and check whether the percentage reporting as per the arithmetical accuracy is happening properly or not. And on sample basis, we can verify the MSME registration certificates, which are collected by the company for the purpose of categorizing them as MSME. Then coming to within India, same thing. The disclosure wants to know that what percentage of spending you're doing within India and how much of the spending is going outside India. So the register that you're maintaining for the purpose of procurement, which includes raw materials, capex, etc. If there are any foreign purchases which are done that are to be reduced, and the remaining purchases which will be within India has to be taken in the numerator, and the total purchases will be falling in the denominator place. Now, the assurance here requires you to actually verify their purchase records and see whether the categorization of MSME imports is done properly by the entity, and whether the recalculation trends also shows the same figures. Lastly, we have job creation in smaller towns for inclusive development. Now, this talks about what is your wage cost at different classification system of RBI. So there are four classification systems which are mentioned by RBI, that is rural, semi-urban, urban, and metropolitan. So basically, what SEBI wants to know is what is your employee cost or wage cost that is going towards each location category as such. Now, for this, we will have to take the location of the employee, the location of the job where the employee is placed and not the location of the employee, and categorize all the costs, that is the salary that you're paying to the employees, into these four buckets, and the reporting has to be done. To verify, again, you will check the backup calculations which are done by the companies, and look about whether all of the percentages are properly reported, whether the classification as per RBI is done properly or not, or whether there are classification issues that could come, because the company may want to report more in rural or semi-urban areas, but their factories or premises may actually not be located there. So we will have to then one by one check the classification as per the RBI system, and recalculate these percentages. The next two disclosures that we have are from the point of view of fairness in engaging with customers and suppliers. Here, the first parameter is on the loss or breach of data for customers. So this you will have to check with the IT team of the client. And from the assurance point of view, you should also have a cyber security expert who can help you navigate the IT systems of the company, and check if there are any loss or breach of data instances of such losses which are there during the financial year. Uh, Here again, if you see the whole BRSR point of view, we saw about environment experts, then we are now seeing cybersecurity experts. So you can very well appreciate that how holistic the non-financial disclosures are, and why a multi disciplinary team is what has been suggested for these type of assignments. The next parameter is on the number of days of accounts payable. Again, this we will have to verify from the financial statements based on the definitions that are given by the SEBI's guidance note and industry standards forum. If the classification and categorization is done properly, and whether the recalculation also shows the same numbers as such. Here, practically, the difficulty, or I would say practical challenge, what we are facing is that companies use accounting terms to come up with the number of days of accounts payable. But the definition that has come from Industry Standard Forum is slightly different. That includes capex and services also. So this number you may not directly be able to correlate with accounts payable turnover ratio and all of that, but you will have to just validate and check whether the calculation is as per SEBI's disclosure or not. And the formula given is accounts payable into 365 upon cost of goods or services procured. So yeah, any questions so far?
Yeah, yeah, we have a few questions.
Yes.
First is, are there assurance standards mandated for assurance providers who are private companies?
Assurance providers who are private companies is what
Company.
you are. Okay, so in that case, you will have to follow either of the assurance framework. If you see about the assurance reports of the companies, primarily ISAE and SSAE are followed, and uh, to apply SSAE, you will have to abide by the professional ethics of ICAI as such. And in there, you will have to see whether your company, which is a private limited company, actually follows the independence, quality control, all of those parameters that are mandated on chartered accountant. ISA as such, ISA and SSA as such does not very well only asks the CAs to use the framework. But again, if a professional is using that framework, they will have to follow all the requirements of that standard.
Okay. One more, there are three more questions. How will you estimate biomedical waste and battery waste? Any thumb rule is there?
So battery waste के लिए you can see if the company has participated or given any of their batteries in the buyback program to the vendors, and based on the quantity you can then arrive at the average weight of each battery and come up with the estimation for the total weight of the batteries. Biomedical waste as such, it cannot be estimated because that is something which is very one time in nature sort of, but you can extrapolate the details. So maybe monitor it for a couple of days and then extrapolate the details for the whole financial year and see whether the company is reporting on that lines.
Okay. Okay. Next question is, a lot of companies, while encountering for well-being of employees, take into account the meal coupon or uniform expenses or safety equipment costs. Will these be considered as well-being measures or normal measures?
In my opinion, after reading the circular and industry standards forum guidance on BRSR code, these should not be considered because they are very well specifying only those 5, 6 categories that we were talking about. But still, if the company is considering this, then the note has to be given on the methodology that is followed by the company to include the safety related equipment and all of that. But primarily, I feel only those 6 parameters which are there in the circular, we should stick only to those, and the well-being should be reported only for those parameters.
Okay. Okay. Next is, what does gross term mean in gross wages?
So gross wages here they have, like I said, this is not clearly mentioned by SEBI. But gross wages, you can very well then consider that the gross costs paid to the company before all of those deductions from the salaries and all. If you want to sort of take it in that terms, that is also permissible. So we take whatever is the cost that is borne by the company on a gross basis. So that is something you can consider in gross wages.
Okay. Yeah. For now, only these many questions are there.
Great. So then
Yeah.
we will now come towards the end of the presentation and take more questions if there are any.
Okay.
All right. So last BRSR core attribute that talks about openness of business. Here again, there are 3 different disclosures or parameters given by SEBI. One is concentration of purchases. The second one is concentration of sales. And the third one is related party transactions. We'll start with related party transactions because that is something which is fairly uh, there in the financial books, and that is something we are very uh, always we know about the RPT transactions, so we will start with that. Here, what BRSR is asking is, what is the share of your purchase which comes from related parties, share of your sale which is done to related parties, what is the loans and advances as on the date of balance sheet that is given to the related parties, and what are the investments that is made in related parties. So what you will do is first quantify the totals of all of these, and then from your related party schedule uh, as per the Ind AS that you are reporting, you will take whatever share of related parties is coming here as the numerator and then arrive at the percentage. To cross check, financial data is very well the best parameter, and you can rely on the numbers that are being published by the statutory auditors. Coming on to the first aspect now, that is concentration of purchases, that is purchases from trading houses. So the data that is required to be reported is what is the percentage of purchases that is happening from trading house, what is the count of trading house that you are purchasing from, and what is your purchase from top 10 trading house? So trading house per se, SEBI has come up with a new guidance saying that the entities which are mostly in the import and export business, so they have given a definition for the companies to identify trading houses. If that definition is satisfied by your vendor, then you will categorize that vendor from trading house. As a pre-step, you can also check the certificates from the trading house or any declarations that the vendors would have given to the company and see whether these disclosures are prepared properly. Next is on the concentration of sales. In concentration of sales, they want to understand what is the dealer and distributor sales that the company is doing. All of these three parameters, if you see, these are very closely held to each other. Concentration of purchases from trading houses means that you are majorly dependent on these entities. Sales to dealers and distributors means that how much are you actually selling to individual customers than you are selling to a closed group. And related party is also something that you have influence and control over. So that is again a closed group. So this whole parameter and attribute is talking about openness of business to understand what percentage is coming outside of these three categories basically. Now, when we talk about dealers and distributors, this is again defined. If those definitions are satisfied, then the categorization has to be done. And as assurance providers, we have to rely on the definitions that is given by the SEBI and cross check whether the calculations are done properly or not. So, in the assurance approach, the SEBI has given guidance to check the data from the financial statements. RPT audited by the financial auditors can be referred. And basically, financial statements are and invoices are the places from where you can draw references to all these three parameters. So these are the BRSR, 9 BRSR core attributes that we saw in detail along with the data and assurance approach. All of these details are covered by the SEBI circular. So if you want to rely on the circular, you can very well check the July circular of last year, which will give you, I mean, July circular, which will give you all of these data points. Now, moving on to the challenges in assurance, these were some of the questions that were also asked during the presentation. And as simple as it may seem and as straightforward the assurance approach may look, this assurance is quite challenging. The aspect and the process of this assurance is quite challenging because of certain factors which are outside the control of the assurance provider also because the data which we are auditing now is something that is prepared by teams who were never been subjected to audit. So the person you are dealing with doesn't know anything about assurance, doesn't know anything about audit, and doesn't know how to actually keep the data, which is not the case with financial uh, statements, right? When the financial statements are prepared, they are also prepared by experts. And when we go as auditors, we rely on the expertise and we understand that the other person knows uh, that these standards are to be followed and these practices and these questions will be asked by the auditor. So they are prepared that way. But when we talk about BRSR assurance, this is fairly new. There is no system as such. We will have to first identify the system, who exactly is giving the data, whether the data is consistent, it is matching with different parameters. Because we have practically seen that if you go to different teams, they will give you different data for the same question. So first, as assurance provider, you will have to then establish that which data and from which team you are going to rely what type of data. That becomes very important because you will get the same data from multiple teams. So these are the few challenges that we have listed below. These are some of the very few. You will have many more challenges as you go over the assurance, but these challenges can be overcome basically. So let us first discuss them and see how we can sort of navigate through. First challenge being inconsistent data quality and availability. Like I mentioned, different teams will give you different data. Data coming from different locations will come in different formats, uh, different units of measurements will be used. So all of this attributes to inconsistent data. To start with audit, first you will have to bring all of the data in the same parameter. Only then you can start applying your auditing techniques and principles, select the samples, verify the samples. So that will come at the later stage. First, you will have to place a reliance on the data. Then there is some ambiguities in interpretation of the BRSR format. Like some companies want to take the spending on safety equipment also in the spending of well-being measure because they feel that is a well-being measure. But as per the SEBI's format, that is not specifically defined. So these type of ambiguities also adds up to the challenge in the BRSR core assurance. Then, like we mentioned, there is limited awareness among the client teams because this is fairly new and challenging, and it is a new addition to their work also. So it will only take some time for them to understand the assurance process, understand how to maintain the data and how the data has to be reported in BRSR. We have lack of standardized internal controls. First thing as statutory auditors is what we verify the internal control and place reliance on how much we can sort of rely on the data that is given by the management. But when we talk about BRSR assurance, there are some uh, some cases where the internal controls are not yet established. In that cases, your sample size will increase, your validation of checking will increase, your techniques and time which is required to be allocated to the project will increase. So that is the nature, time, and extent of audit which we talk about will greatly depend upon the internal control. And if there is no standardized internal control, that will act as a biggest challenge, in my opinion, for the BRSR assurance. Next comes multi-location data consolidation. 2 3 client locations are fine, but say you're working with a bank which is operating 3,000 locations across the country. So the consolidation of 3,000 locations manually is not possible. Then that multi-location consolidation is something that you will have to handle. That volume of data has to be handled. So that also poses a challenge in the assurance process. And lastly, timeliness and the quality pressure. I feel this is something that you will have to first, at the time of planning the engagement, only establish that what are the deadlines that the client is looking at, and whether or not the client will be able to provide you the data within that defined set of um, timelines that you're setting for the project. Because it should not so be that you're coming to the last fragment of your assignment and it is like, no, we have to close the board meeting today, we have to give that report today, so you will have to hurry up with your process because the data is not standardized to that extent, and you will not be able to sort of give any opinion without understanding the quality of the data. So time frame is something that also has to be kept in mind, and this also can pose a challenge in the whole process. Any other challenges if you're facing? I mean, I would like to know if there are any comments on this aspect.
There is just one. They are just like, sorry to go back to the energy footprint again, but how will we estimate work from home emissions?
Right. So work from home emissions generally will come in the scope 3 category. It will not come in scope 1 and 2 per se, because those are not in the direct control of the entity. So that will not be coming in your BRSR code. That will be coming in your scope 3 emissions. Again, in
Ach-
scope 3 emissions, if you choose to put that in the reporting boundary, then you will have to conduct surveys with your employees and understand what is the type of energy consumption that they do, and then bring that in your reporting data.
Okay. No more questions.
Great, great. So we come to the end of the presentation, that what is the way forward for us as chartered accountants, how we can see ourselves as a BRSR core assurance practitioner. So I would suggest, these are my personal suggestions and opinions. Feel free to add yours and take it with a pinch of salt, that there are more things that we can do and more enthusiasm that we can bring as professionals in this field. So investing in sectoral ESG knowledge and materiality understanding. This will be very helpful because each sector has different aspects which are more triggering. If we talk about uh, IT sector, which is mainly and largely working with lot of data, client database, etc. For them, data breaches is more important aspect because they handle lot of their own data as well as data of their clients. But when we talk about a manufacturing company, for them, parameters like water may be more important and not the data breach. So we will have to first understand which sector the company and the client is belonging and what are the different parameters which will be a key parameter to them. So we cannot say that this parameter is more important, this parameter is less important. It really depends on which client and which sector you are working. So establishing that is something which can be done. Then if we were to start this practice and take this forward, developing standardized templates and checklists like how we have for our financial audits. Same way, if we have a set of checklists readily available with us, this will help us execute the projects better. It will reduce the time and effort from our end and also bring a consistency in our systems and work. So that is something that can be done. We can integrate tech tools for data review. Like I mentioned, there are, if say, 50 locations for consolidation, and if we are integrating a tech tool from our end, so we can select the samples based on the tool. We can consolidate the data based on tool. So a lot of work which can result in manual errors can be avoided if we are investing in tech tools for the purpose of data review. Then building internal capacity for BRSR, uh, SSA compliance, as well as monitoring international trends. So here, the SSA standard, although similar in the financial audits, there are specific requirements that it brings about. And making our team, our articles, our whole team which will be performing the assurance engagement aware about the different uh, aspects of the standard as well as the BRSR per se, will help us in building the whole practice and tying all the ends together. Then we have something as training clients on reporting readiness. This is the pre-assurance phase handholding that you can do, that you can help establish certain systems and processes at the client's end that will help you sort of at the time of assurance, where you are clearly aware of what internal controls the client has and whether those internal controls actually work. So this readiness for client and capacity building at the client's end can go far more beneficial for us at the time of actual assurance to be taken place. Lastly, we would suggest in creating knowledge assets that can be FAQs, playbooks, case study repositories that is for your internal purpose. With each client that you're facing or you're seeing from the BRSR reports that you have been reading, you can create a case study understanding of that client, and those things can be used for same clients in the industry or similar clients that will help you build the overall practice from a very holistic point of view. So yeah, these are the points and suggestions from my end. If there are any further questions, we can take them as well. I think we are well
Yes.
ahead of the time. Yeah.
Yes, we do have some questions again. One such is, a lot of times while assuring MSME percentage, company reports on the basis of payment base. A company reports on the basis if payment basis and not accrual based accounting due to their ERP system. There is one more addition in this for input material. What all kind of services should be included? All the other expenses appearing in financials, even employee benefit expenses, rent, director remuneration, etc.
Okay, so first question, that is MSME payment basis. Ideally, you will have to take it on accrual basis only because the financials are prepared on accrual basis. If at all that is not happening, then you will have to roll back the data from payment basis to accrual basis, considering that you get only 45 days or maybe lesser than that in certain cases. So then you have to roll back the data, apply some assumption, and come up with the methodology. If that is also not which is possible, then you will have to report your methodology that the client is following in the BRSR, so that the users of the report are aware on how the calculation is done and why it is differing from the SEBI's format. The second question was on what type of input
Huh,
services has to
huh,
be considered. So
huh.
again, that is not clearly defined, but if you see, when we talk about service, there should be two parties which are involved in the transaction. So if there is a rent, you can definitely consider because there is a vendor and service as such. But we generally avoid employee benefit expenses here because that is something which is already considered in other places for well-being and gross wages, etc.,
Mm,
and that necessarily need not amount to input material services. So what you can do is and that again, it depends now. It depends on the industry that you are functioning, right? For some industries, finance cost is major. I cannot say that for banks you can avoid finance cost, right? So that we will have to go by industry and case to case basis, see what your peers are doing and reporting, and according to that, arrive at the methodology. Either
And
case, we have to disclose.
director remuneration in this case,
Uh,
director.
Director remuneration, I feel, should not be considered as input service.
Okay. A lot of times, companies don't include capex procurement due to the conventional nature of definition of input material. They only include direct purchase related things.
Right. This was what even I was discussing when we were talking about that parameter. Since the industry standard forum clearly asks you to include capex, and even though it is a bit deviating from your regular financial definitions, you will have to insist the client to include the same.
Okay. Next is for accounts payable. It says cost of goods or services. What kind of services are to be included? Will capex be included? Because what we know, the formula be used is raw material purchases, stock and trade purchases. But because of service companies are also including the whole other expenses part.
So, till last year, there was no clear definitive guidance to this, but a couple of months ago, the Industry Standards Forum has made this very clear that they want to include the services and capex procurement both in cost of goods procured aspect. So, if you go through the definition, it will ask you to include whatever you have included in total purchases. So, that way you will have to include capex also and other services, etc. So that is why even service industry is reporting on this parameter.
Okay. For related party transactions, should we pick the amounts as disclosed under the related party disclosure from the financials? Because ISF guidelines state it has to be as per SEBI LODR filings. And
So
next,
yeah.
sorry. Will director sitting fees be included in the calculation for purchases?
So first question first, that is whether LODR filings, what you are taking for related party transactions, that is the same thing that is coming in the Companies Act in the form of NDS. So you can directly take it from the financial schedules. It will be more or less same. But you can have one round of discussion with the preparer that are there any deviations from the regulatory filings, which should not be the case. But if that is the case, you will have to specifically disclose that. Second thing, director sitting fees. Again, there is no specific guidance on whether it has to be taken or not. In my opinion, you can sort of avoid that if that is, but director sitting fees will be sitting in the professional charges. So that is already there in the other expenses group. And if you have considered the whole of other expenses, then specifically reducing one by one expenses will not be required. So director's remuneration, if it is going in employee benefit expenses, you can ignore, but director's sitting fee you can consider. Again, you will have to see how the industry and peers are reporting, and that way you can go forward.
Okay. What kind of documentation do trading houses or dealers have to look into?
So trading houses will have a trading house certificate, just like MSME certificates. You will have to see that the clients are collecting those certificates, or at least taking, uh, uh, I would say, declaration from the vendors that they are trading house. And same goes for dealers and distributors.
Okay. Okay. Next is whether the assurance practice is remunerative as compared to workload.
This is something that you will have to decide based on the nature, timing, and extent of your audit, and whatever uh, assignment that you're accepting should very well be rewarding to you. Otherwise, again, that will be conflict of interest from your point of view, and you will not be able to go through the ethics clearance in that aspect. So you will have to take that decision yourself.
Fair. Next question is why do you consider work from home emissions as scope 3 emission? For example, a software company in top 100 or 250 where they work only 2 or 3 days in office. So majority emission is happening from home.
Right, that is rightly mentioned by you that majority emissions happens from home. But if you see the GHG protocol, that is GHG protocol for GHG accounting, in that scope 3 emissions are categorized. Work from home emissions are basically categorized in scope 3 because the company cannot directly control how much of electricity you're using, how much of Wi-Fi you're using working from home, what is the petrol cost because you're working from home, right? So that is not something which is in the control of the entity. And if suppose there can be one more scenario that the company is reimbursing the electricity bill for you. So whatever your monthly electricity bill is there, you're directly giving it to the company and the company is bearing that cost. In that case, yes, because the company is bearing it, the company has all the details and it can take it in the scope too. But in cases where which will not happen, no software company will reimburse your electricity expense as such.
True.
So you will take it in scope 3.
Okay. Okay. Next question is, what are the most significant practical challenges being faced by assurance providers while verifying BRSR core disclosures, especially in areas like chain data, emissions, and social metrics?
So supply chain data so far is not part of the BRSR core assurance. It is voluntary for the companies to disclose from next year and mandatory for assurance from the year after. So there is a gap in establishing the process, and we are also waiting for the guidelines to be released on how that data will be gathered and verified and monitored. From emissions perspective, whatever challenges were there, that is consolidation challenges, unit of measurement errors, emission factors are different, and all of those that we already discussed. So I think that is one of the most challenging parts for the BRSR core assurance. And from the social metrics, since most of the data is coming from financials, there is a fair reliance that you can place on the disclosure. So that is something I would consider, that your financial acumen will help you a lot while doing BRSR core assurance.
Okay. Okay. And last question is, what are the primary expectations from assurance providers under the SEBI mandated BRSR core assurance framework, and how do these align with global sustainability assurance practices?
I think we answered this question initially. It's the same
Okay.
question that has been repeated.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, these are the only questions.
Great, then that's it from my end. Thank you so much, all of you, for patient listening and such engaging questions and discussions. I look forward to more such discussions. And this is now our new field and new area where we, as chartered accountants, can show a lot of professional acumen from both financial and non-financial perspective, and we can sort of diversify and bring in our expertise in this area as well. So I would love to collaborate, participate, and understand more about how you are working in this space. And if you're having any questions, you can always reach out. And thank you so much to the SRSB team for this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Sustainability Reporting Standards Board of I extend my heartfelt thanks to each of you for joining us today for the insightful webinar on BRSR core assurance, key expectations, practical challenges, and the way forward. Your active participation and thoughtful questions added immense value to today's discussions, and your engagement reflects the growing momentum towards strengthening sustainability disclosures in India. A special word of appreciation to our esteemed speaker, CA Muskan K. Jain, for sharing her in-depth knowledge and practical perspectives on the evolving assurance landscape under BRSR core. Your insights into regulatory expectations, implementation challenges, and the roadmap ahead have provided much needed clarity for professionals and preparers alike. As BRSR core assurance becomes a critical component of credible ESG reporting, Understanding the nuances of assurance requirements and aligning them with global good practices is imperative. Today's session has helped us all move a step closer to that goal. We hope you found the session enriching and informative. We also invite you to join us for our next webinar scheduled on Thursday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., where we will continue our dialogue on emerging topics in the sustainability and reporting ecosystem. Once again, thank you for your valuable time and active engagement. We look forward to your continued participation in our upcoming initiatives.
Thank you.
Thank you, Muskan.
Thank you. Thank you, Kinjal. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.